All right, let's stick with the Coalition's divorce. I'm joined now by former Speaker of the House, Bronwyn Bishop, and Liberal Senator Holly Hughes. Bronwyn, in the long term, do you think this will all just work out? It's a little lover's tiff?
It'll work out, and I'll tell you why. Because we have a compulsory preferential voting system, it means it's a two-party system. And the Liberals cannot win without the Nationals. 3 times they could have, but saw the sense of not doing it because the next time round that they would need it. So when we look at a, call it a spat or a disagreement that's going on now, imagine what it must have been like between Earl Page and Menzies at the end of the UAP days. I mean, those people knew how to draw blood. So I was actually in the Parliament in '87. That's when I was sworn into the Senate. And I was there when the two parties separated. And I knew they'd come back together again because that is the history. We got compulsory voting in 1918 and we got, or rather we got provisional voting in 1918 and compulsory in 23. So it's been there for a long time and that's our system. Nigel Farage couldn't happen here because of our voting system.
Exactly, because they got first past the post.
They will come back together out of sheer survival.
Obviously, for a couple more months, you will sit in the Senate as a Liberal.
I don't know, not counting down at all.
So you won't have to deal with any of this, and you may well be glad of that.
Seriously,
Holly.
I think you've dodged a bullet in some
but A, what do you think the Nationals are playing at here? And B, will it affect the Libs?
So I'm a bit perplexed by the timing, I have to be honest. Susan Lead was elected a week ago. We're 3 weeks out from the last election. We're 3 years from the next election. And there's been a lot of commentary from people who've never been in the party room. And the reality is, when you go into the party room after an election, and particularly an election defeat, everything is on the table. Everything is still there, but it is up for review. So it would absolutely have been unacceptable for Susan, or in fact anyone else, had they been leader of the Liberal Party, to go into the Nationals and said, yep, OK, we're going to agree to put these 4 policy agenda items absolutely in stone so that they cannot be changed. It is the Liberal Party processes that need to be respected. And one of the things, and to Garth Hamilton's point in what he said, and I said it in an interview earlier today, Peter Dutton ran a really unified team, but perhaps that was actually a bit of a mistake. One of the reasons so many of us were caught flat-footed during the election that the policy work hadn't been done was because it hadn't gone through the party room processes. It's really important, and this is a matter for the next party room, that they do fight it out. It is going to be messy, but it's 3 years till the next election. And if they really want to go to the next election as a unified team, all singing from the same song sheet, knowing what they're standing for. And this isn't a question either of Liberal values. You know, I've heard a few other commentators say they don't know what they stand for. Liberal values haven't changed, but it's the policies, and policies move with the time and move with the community as they go. So it's not about changing our values. Our values are still very much there, but it's making sure that the policy that the party room puts forward lines up. The other thing I just want to touch on that was really important was around the cabinet solidarity. Matt Canavan, to his credit, when we went into opposition, decided not to take on a shadow portfolio, so he was free to sit in the bleachers and throw the jaffas as he wanted, when he wanted, as is in the Coalition, you're allowed to from the back bench. But solidarity of a cabinet is really important, and the request that they could not agree with cabinet colleagues, still hold the positions, still have the staff and the extra pay, but then go out and throw their own bombs is, in my view, completely unacceptable and untenable.
It was a good try, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's a trial. Very Marianne. Let them eat having a cake and eat it.
And that would never ever fly.
And the other point that you made, Holly, about no discussion, no animosity, no challenges in the party room is true. And that's exactly what happened under John Hewson when I was there too. He too had a steady ship and no disagreements going. You need disagreements.
Absolutely.
You've got to be able to fight for them. You've got
to have fierce debate.
And I have a lot of respect for Peter Dutton. I think he's given great contribution to the country. But I've never been in a worse campaign, I think. The Hewson campaign was pretty bad, but this one was pretty...
Just very quickly.
The unity ticket continues, Bronwyn, all I can say.
Very quickly before we move on, Holly, how much do you think Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price joining your party room may have affected?
Look, it was mentioned today. I think it's definitely an underlying issue. I have heard from National Party colleagues and their fury is palpable, absolutely palpable, and particularly in the Senate where they have now lost party status in the Senate. I think it is a myth for anyone to think that somehow Angus Taylor and Jacinta Price would have kept the coalition together. I think that would have been a bomb that would have blown it up, maybe irrevocably, because there is a lot of anger there. But Jacinta's very welcome in our party room,
justification.
but there is a lot of anger in the National Party
She was elected from the country Liberal Party.
Yes.
And there's a bit of hypocrisy in there. The LNP is technically part of the Liberal Party.
Yes.
But by convention, members can elect to sit in the National Party room, despite the fact they're really under the Liberal Party banner.
Yeah.
So it's no different from the country Liberal Party.
You've also been a party president. You know how all of this works.
I do.
And
I've negotiated. I personally have negotiated
funding and all of those.
I have personally negotiated those agreements and the party agreement and where the funding goes and so on. And I know I set out to drive a very hard bargain, and I think I probably did.
We'll get further into all of this stuff a little later with Michael McCormack. Moving on to some other news today. Labor's under pressure to end its $6.8 billion power bill rebate. So I'll come back to why in a moment, but the Treasurer, for his part, won't rule out extending them.
We've budgeted for it to end at the end of this year. That's clear in the budget papers. But what we do each budget in this room next door is we sit down with the Expenditure Review Committee and we work out whether we can afford to provide more assistance, and if so, what form that assistance would take. That will be our approach.
Now, this call to end them is coming from the Prime Minister's Economic Inclusion Advisory Committee, which is the fancy term for his welfare working group. They say it should instead be spent on solar panels and batteries for low-income households. So, you know, they're not exactly saying we should save some money here, but they do have a point in the fact that the rebates need to end because they do not fix the actual problem, which is, of course, the cost of the energy. The rebate simply changes what it says on the bill. It doesn't change anything in reality in terms of what it costs to get it to you.
But once they embarked on renewables only, their policy, and rewiring the nation, astronomical costs, the single most expensive power you can have in the world. That's what they're giving us. They promised $275 of reduction. No, they can't deliver it. But with a $300 rebate, they're bringing it down. They're reducing their inflationary pressure, which is what they've done with the Reserve Bank to make the first cut, nicely timed for the election, of course. So why wouldn't they keep it up?
Well, it's a good point. Obviously, it worked electorally, but I mean, you know, we just wanted to add $275. I think that's what we were promised, wasn't it?
Well, I think the unicorn farmers that they've got on some of this economic advisory, you know, solar panels and batteries, when a lot of people in low-income housing are actually in apartments, so don't have the option for solar panels. You know, these people actually need to get out. I did notice the Brotherhood of St Lawrence, they had a representative on there, and he was talking about at least making some of these rebates means tested rather than just universal.
Which makes it, like, if you're going to do it...
No, you've got to understand.
I know we don't have time.
No, there's another very special side to the way that rebate is paid. It's actually paid
to the power,
the energy
to the
company.
power companies.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, and if you're going to start means testing, you can't do that.
You can't do that. And so it won't have the so-called inflationary reduction power because it's not coming off the bill.
And that's the point. It's not a rebate to you.
Hence why we're not unicorn farmers and understand
it's a cash
economics.
handout to the power company. Thousands of firefighters and farmers protested outside Melbourne's Parliament House this morning against, of course, the Allen government's emergency services levy, which is part of today's state budget. I mean, farmers will cop an insane 150% tax hike. But of course, many of these farmers are the volunteer firefighters who will supposedly benefit from this increased tax. So they're now cutting crook. They're saying they won't put their uniforms on anymore. There's been vision going around of people burning their uniforms. They're turning their pages off and saying, well, bugger you, why would we help out if you're going to charge us to do the work that you won't pay someone to do? Victorian opposition leader Brad Batten said they would repeal this if they win government.
I will make the commitment to you that if we are elected on November next year, the Victorian Liberals will scrap that tax and hand that money back to Victoria.
Now, look, if you're a landowner in Victoria, Bronwyn, you are essentially an enemy of the state because what they've done to land tax down there is ridiculous. Yes. But this is effectively just another land tax by stealth. We'll just get some more money out of you. And funnily enough, the money they're going to pull in from this is very similar to the surplus today they said they would post.
Funny about that, isn't it? But this is what socialists do. We often hear the expression that they tax and spend. They spend and tax because they hand out the money. What they want to do is make people dependent on the government. And if they rip it off a particular group of people, they don't care about that. They simply want more and more people to be dependent on them so they can keep their nice little spot of power. So I don't think that's going to work this time.
Well, it kind of reminds...
And at least we've got an opposition now.
Well,
it says...
I was going to say, that elections have consequences. And this has been the consequence of consistently electing a Labor government in Victoria, has been this astronomical growth in state debt that they're now trying to get on top of.
Well, nearly 200
But it's also the
billion
reason why strong oppositions are important. And hopefully with Brad Batten and some of the other more fringe issues they were concerned with more recently are behind them, and the Liberal Party in Victoria can get its act together to actually put up an opposition, because elections have consequences. And when you elect people who have no economic understanding and they just keep spending and keep spending and keep spending, they are going to come for it at some stage. And this is what they're seeing in Victoria, and we could see nationally sooner than we all think.
You'd like to think so. And of course, you know, as I said, when she became the Premier of Victoria, Jacinta Allen ain't no Daniel Andrews, and it's very difficult to hold together what Andrews put together if you're not Andrews himself. Now, Labor's super tax is so unpopular, even Itll independent Monique Ryan has criticised what she called the poorly considered and harmful and unfair policy. She said the government's plan to increase tax on high balances shouldn't include taxation of unrealised gains, which is common sense stuff, and it must be indexed if it does happen. I know Kate Chaney in WA has come out against it too. Now, of course, Bronwyn, the Teals might realise that they have people in their seats who may well fall into this category, so they know what side their bread is buttered on, but what they say is correct. I mean, the idea, the concept of taxing unrealised capital gains
came straight from Biden.
It is insane.
Even worse, Kamala.
It is insane, because once you say you can tax someone on a profit that they haven't cashed in their super, where does it go next?
Well, it's called theft, actually.
Well, all taxation is theft, bro.
Well, no. Some taxation is quite legitimate, but this is theft. And the Labor Party regards that $4 trillion of superannuation money as their money, not the foregone wages of the people who've earned it. It belongs to individuals. It's not a corporate ownership or a collective ownership. It's an individual ownership. But they don't acknowledge that. And this principle, if they get it up, watch it spread. That's the really evil nature of it. But if you... Interestingly enough, in the campaigning that I did during the campaign, that's what I talked about, the evilness of this tax. And the people it would really hit are the millennials.
Yep, yeah. 100%.
Because by the time they get up here...
Well, that's the AMP model, 22-year-old today, on an average wage for the rest of their life, and 64, yet, they'll have $3 million.
This snake charmer, the Treasurer, has the audacity to say, oh, well, in the years ahead, some government might choose to index it. What an absolute hypocrisy.
And it's ridiculous. You could just index it yourself. We've only got 20 seconds, Holly. But this is something that
millennials who voted because they're going to get a small reduction on their HECS debt are going to pay that and more into the future, whether it's their superannuation, capital gains on their parents' family home. The banker mum and dad just got a whole lot poorer if these guys get their way.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be not our generation. Well, actually, you are still a child, Caleb.
Oh, boy. just over. God,
you make us.
Caroline Marcus.
Very young,
Caroline Marcus,
but you are going to be paying this in the future.
I know, and the coalition should be. Well, it's not the coalition anymore. The Liberal Party should be going hard on this as youth policy. Anyway, I'm sorry, we've run out of time. Bronwyn, Holly, thank you so much for joining me.